With the sheer volume of exotics and specifically exotic weapons that exist within Destiny 2, it just makes sense that not every single one of them is going to be the perfect exotic for every person. There are going to be some exotics that are just a little lackluster. So today what we're going to do is we're going to take some of those less than optimal exotics and make them a little bit more interesting. Let's just jump straight into this here. This is like my fourth take trying to record this because every single time I've gone off on a bunny trail. Borealis. It is fine, but fine isn't good enough within Destiny 2, either PvP or PvE. It has to be spectacular for it to see any serious use. So, an obvious solution to this would be to make the Ionic Return perk bonus damage be more damaging would be fine, but not very interesting. I think what would be interesting is if you gave it Disruption Break. This would perfectly play into the idea of the Borealis' built-in perk. This would also make it much more valuable in team settings where the Borealis really struggles to compete. And in PvP, this would be terrifying. Getting body shot by a Borealis would basically be a death sentence for the next 5 seconds to any Guardians firing kinetic weapons at you, which, in case you're unaware, Disruption Break increases damage from kinetic weapons to that target for a short period of time. Next up, we have the Legend of ACRIUS. ACRIUS is another one of those exotics that has just kind of fallen by the wayside over the years and hasn't really seen any significant changes to bring it back into the meta. I think it would be a really interesting change to the exotic is to just, first of all, get rid of Longest March. This increases your range of your radar. No one in PvE is ever thinking to themselves, boy, I sure am glad I've got increased range on this radar. I might not have seen that target. I think what would be really cool is to allow the Legend of ACRIUS to have a wind up. So similar to how something like a bow or a fusion rifle would work, but you could hold it indefinitely. This would allow the weapon to, when you would release it after a full charge up, to deal a much wider blast, and it would deal, let's say, 1.5 times its normal damage, making it a much better option for a big burst of damage, a premeditated big burst of damage. And it, let's be honest, tell me that doesn't sound like way more fun. Like, ACRIUS is already kind of an interesting and fun weapon, but just saying no to a big old target or to a big group of enemies sounds way more entertaining in my book. Next up is Cold Heart. I was pleasantly surprised. I haven't touched Cold Heart in a while in PvP, just to get the footage for you guys. I was really surprised with how effective Cold Heart is. I typically don't like trace rifles in PvP. This surprised me. I've seen a lot of people say, just make it deal stasis damage, which I think people don't understand that the Cold Heart is called the Cold Heart because its core is cooled, which allows that beam. Stasis damage could be fine, but you'd have to be really careful about it. The biggest complaint to the Cold Heart is that its exotic intrinsic perk is that it's a trace rifle. That's no longer interesting when we have 5 of them in the game total, and all of them are more interesting than the Cold Heart. So I think it would be, now bear with me on this one here, the safe solution to this would to just allow it to do something fun, like over-penetrate targets. This would make it a little bit better in the crowd control department, and it would allow its perk to stay a little bit more consistent, as you could penetrate multiple targets at once and maybe theoretically double stack how quickly you get up to maximum damage with the Cold Heart. But hear me out, tell me if I'm crazy in the comments. What if we made this a primary weapon? Keep it in the energy slot, but what if this took primary ammo? Maybe we could turn down the overall damage a little bit, but I think this would really carve out the niche that this weapon is going for much better. It's just a thought. Next up, WAVESPLITTER. I was really disappointed in WAVESPLITTER. I expected it to be slightly better than Cold Heart, but it was the other way around. This is one of those weapons that doesn't really have a place in the game right now since Ruinous Effigy has inserted itself into our world. Ruinous Effigy is just a far more interesting, far more utility-based, exotic, obviously exotic, trace rifle, and WAVESPLITTER just can't compete. A really easy solution to this would be just to allow it to have some kind of throwaway exotic catalyst, which would allow it to proc its Orb of Light pickup, because obviously once it has a catalyst, it can start creating its own Orbs of Light, allowing it to be a little bit more consistent and a little bit more self-reliant. But what if we did another absolutely bonkers, just completely out of left field change? I am so sorry I'm putting this in the front of the video. I should really put the more tame, more clever solutions, more nuanced solutions towards the front. I'm hitting you with all my sauce all up front. I'm gonna lose so many people are gonna be clicking away. Okay, what if it was kinetic? This would make it have a much more clear-cut niche that it's trying to fulfill. And obviously that's a bit of a debuff, right? Because, you know, it's no longer dealing elemental damage. So what if we also allowed it to deal anti-barrier? This would give us a trace rifle that has anti-barrier, just like we have overload on, say, like the Divinity. This could be a good anti-barrier option. I don't know. It's just a thought. I think this would be a little bit more interesting. I know I would be more interested in it, as obviously we don't have a kinetic trace rifle right now. Obviously, it would still take special ammo, but let me know. Next up, Merciless. Some people have said that Merciless is good. Some people are lying. Merciless is not good in PvP. I know a lot of people just got up in arms about that. Yes, in PvE, it is perfectly fine. It's a really, really fun weapon to use. In PvP, this is not good. Please use a different fusion rifle. This is a slower charge time for less damage. This is not good. Even with the catalyst, please, there are better options out there. I think that this would be much better leaning in on it being a really fantastic PvE fusion rifle, which we don't really have really anything that's super good in that category right now. Telesto gets some use, but nothing that's really taking the cake. So hear me out. Let's move this into the heavy ammo slot, which currently we're competing with the 1,000 Voices, which fair. What if we also made it arc so that it can have its own special niche for it being an arc fusion rifle, as opposed to trying to compete with the 1,000 Voices for solar fusion rifle, and just cranked up the damage on this thing, made it to where it really feels like a heavy weapon. If it helps keep it in your mind in PvP, make it to where only 2 bolts are required to kill a target. If you can catch my drift on that. Make this thing an absolute monster for damage. Obviously, as its conserve momentum perk, which it continues to increase its charge time, charge rate until it reaches its max, this would be really, really cool. I think that this would make this weapon have a much clearer niche within the world of PvE, and it would dissuade some people from trying to convince other people that it's actually viable in PvP, which it's not. I own a stack of Bibles. I'm not lying to you. It is not good. Fight me, comment section. And like I said, if we don't want to compete with the 1,000 Voices, we can make it arc. We can even maybe give it overload if we want to do that. I know it's not the most interesting change just to simply give it overload, but it does allow it to be a little bit more viable. Next up is Tommy's Matchbook. Tommy's Matchbook is the biggest fail, I believe, in terms of flavor from Destiny, and that's because it's not an SMG. First change I would absolutely make if I had my way. Maybe it's good that I don't have my way. So I would make it a 750 SMG rather than a 720. Second, I would reduce the recoil, the left and right recoil. This is purely from a PvP player standpoint. I like this gun a lot, but the recoil, just because there's so much stuff, so much orange coming out of that sight, it gets really difficult to really trace where my shots are going. But I think the most important change is to change its catalyst. Rather than having the Tommy's Matchbook increase your health regeneration after having burned yourself a bit, make it to where while you're burning yourself, you take reduced damage. Not a lot of reduced damage, just like, let's say 10%, something similar to how like the ACRIUS works. This would make the weapon play into what its role is a little bit better and make it feel a little less bad that you're having to hurt yourself in order to deal this extra damage. Let me know what you think on that one. Next up is Polaris Lance. This is such an awkward gun. I really think this whole idea should be scrapped, as it just doesn't fill any niches, nor is it just doesn't do enough to really ever really warrant its use. I'm sure there's some people out there who live or die by this weapon, but it's a scout rifle first of all, and its perk is just not the most interesting. I think we can change that though. First of all, get rid of Zen Moment, replace it with Rapid Hit. First easy fix. Secondly, instead of having these explosions from the perfect 5th perk trigger after every 4th hit and just trigger automatically, make it to where it'll trigger as soon as you reload, and you can continue to stack explosions on a target, which would increase not necessarily the damage that each deal, but the blast radius that this has until you hit that reload button. Once you do, big ol' explosion could be great for adding, just sprinkling just a touch of crowd control into the weapon, as well as making this way more fun. This sounds way more enjoyable to essentially stick C4 to a target from way across the other side of the map and then detonate it on my trigger, rather than what it does right now, which is just mildly increase its damage. Second to last, we have Symmetry. If you don't like Symmetry, you haven't probably played with enough Symmetry. Symmetry is fantastic, both from a power standpoint and from a fun standpoint. Is it the most effective scout rifle in terms of damage? Well, no, it's a scout rifle, especially in PvE. In PvP, this thing is a lot of fun, I can tell you that. You can see some of the clips in the background here. I just think this weapon needs to be more fun. I don't think this needs to just like deal more damage or whatever. Or we need to do anything that strictly increases its overall efficacy. I just think it needs to be more fun. So why don't we let the revolutions, according to how many stacks of revolutions you have from the normal fire rate of the Symmetry, cause knockback that scales with those revolutions. So if you catch what I'm saying here, At 1 stack of revolutions, it wouldn't do anything. It would just like mildly slow you down if you were sprinting at it. And then if you had like, let's say 10 stacks, let's assume this is PvP because this is a little bit easier for somebody to actually see and witness. If you shoot a target with this would knock them back significantly. Obviously, this doesn't last for an indefinite period of time. This just lasts for as long as you have it out. This would make it a fantastic crowd control option in PvP. And in PvE, I want to beat a mother trucker with another mother trucker. Can I get an amen on that? I want to take a thrall and smack him into the side of a knight and have it deal more damage. You know what I'm saying? This would be so much more fun. I would love this. Our very last exotic on here is one that I am surprised is on the list at all, is Lumina. Lumina's fantastic. Seriously, if you haven't realized how powerful it is to essentially, especially if you're a warlock, essentially always keep a 20% damage bonus up almost all the time, you really need to give Lumina another go. A simple solution to get this weapon a little bit more used and a little bit more loved is let the Lumina, when you heal or buff a target, whatever damage that target deals, consider it as an assist to the person who buffed them. Let's say you shoot one of your Lumina healing rounds all the way across the map and it hits a Titan, and that Titan goes in and kills a whole bunch of Thrall. Let that count as a mild assist to what you did, maybe giving you a slight buff in super energy, maybe playing into some other exotic maybe you've got on or whatever perk you've got going. Failing that, if that turns out to be too difficult to program for Bungie, what if we made the Blessing of Sky buff that the Lumina gives also increase the damage of abilities? That would make this feel a lot more powerful and a lot more useful in a bunch of different categories. Maybe even too much. Maybe we could make it so that it doesn't affect supers, as obviously I could see something like a Celestial Nighthawk with the Blessing of the Sky bonus damage could get a little nuts, but maybe it's not. Maybe that's not crazy enough. Maybe we need to push it further, but let me know what you guys think of this one. These are always fun to make. If you are new, please make sure that you subscribe. If you want to see more of this, if we see enough subscribers, likes, views, etc., we will definitely move this to the armor category, maybe start going through some exotic armors. But anyway, let me know. Let me know if you guys have any idea in the comment section. Hope you enjoyed. Bless your faces and deuces.